All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are releasing a report today on the impact of the state's ESA program or school vouchers program, which was signed into law in 2023. Here's the bottom line. 80% of the money that has gone into the school vouchers program has gone to pay for tuition for students who were already attending private schools. This is entirely based on data that comes from the Reynolds administration. In 2022, before this program existed, before the bill was passed and been drafted, the Department of Education put out estimates of private school student enrollment. They show that in this year, in fiscal year 26, they expected 33,054 students to be enrolled in private schools. Now that we are here in this school year, we can see that actual enrollment is 41,892. That is simple math, 8,838 more students than originally expected before the vouchers program existed. So what that means is that we can assume those 808, or excuse me, what that means is we can assume that 8,800 students were enrolled in the program because the program existed. Now, you might be aware that in this same fiscal year, the cost of the program is $330 million. What that means is this program has cost for each student $37,294 to get them enrolled into a private school for each student that wouldn't have been enrolled in a private school. Let me restate that more simply. The ESA program costs $38,000 per student who wasn't already expected to be enrolled in private schools. This is an analysis conducted entirely with numbers from the Reynolds administration. It is very simple math. It is simply using a projection that was made before the ESA program was created as to how many students would be in private schools this year, then comparing that to the actual number and looking at the difference, and then dividing the total cost of the program across that difference. These are questions that we have been asked many, many times in this office, but obviously we were limited in our ability to audit the program at all 2 years ago. And we were very limited in our capacity to look at it just last year. So we took the opportunity with this publicly available information to do a very simple analysis to answer some of the questions that we have been asked over the years regarding the program. Let's see here. We also dug into the number of private schools and how that has changed. Prior to the ESA program, the number of private schools in Iowa was steady or maybe slightly declining. Based on the pre-program trends, you would have expected that we had had 174 private schools in Iowa this calendar year. In reality now, there are 232, 58 more, representing a 25% increase. However, at the same time, the number of closures per year has changed from 2.6 to 5.7. So we are seeing vastly more private schools close and open. In fact, at least 2 of them have closed and opened within the same school year, which obviously creates instability for any students that are enrolled as well as their families. The size of private schools is also changing. Before the program, only 2 schools had enrollment that was below 20 students. We now have had 14 private schools that have had fewer than 20 students. Many of the schools that have closed since Governor Reynolds signed the ESA program were new schools. They had opened within the last 5 years. It's also important to note that there's been a shift in accreditation. The state offers accreditation for private schools, but recently has allowed to also have private entities accredit schools and then accept those accreditations on behalf of the state. Of the 60 new schools that have opened since the ESA program started, only 1 has state accreditation. Most of the new schools are relying instead on the independent accreditation agencies approved by the Board of Education. Happy to take questions.
How did you get the 38,000 number? Because
Yeah,
the deposit in the ESA is roughly $8,000.
so what we are looking at here is, I'll keep you right, I'll stay right where I am, there you go. Repeat the question, I'll run you through it.
So how did you get $38,000?
Yeah, yeah,
Is the
okay.
ESA payment
Right.
is about
It's 38,000 per student who would not have been otherwise enrolled in the private school. So this year, the program goes to every single student, right? There's no income limits, right?
but not all students have signed up.
Students who are accepting the program,
Okay.
it totals a cost of $330. And that includes students of any income. And so when you include that 330 million cost and you take the projection from the Reynolds administration and say, well, this is how many would have been in there anyway. Because before we knew we were going to have this program, the Reynolds administration said we could expect this many students. You subtract those many students out because they were going to be there anyway, fair. So what we're looking at is it's a $37,000 cost per student who would not have otherwise been in private school. All of the other students were expected to be in private school, and the enrollment in private school is expected to be at that level before the ESA program was met.
That seems weird
How so?
because you're not counting the number of students who are using the payment and then dividing that into 330.
Sure. Let me think of it this way. Or let me say it this way. This program has been advocated as a means for providing school choice. It is costing $37,000 per student who did not otherwise have access to student choice. If that makes sense. So when they say we want to promote student choice or school choice, they talk about that in terms of we are opening up private schools to students who otherwise could not afford to be there. What we are doing is we are subtracting the students that were already enrolled without any ESA program at all, because they were already there and they were going to be there whether or not there was an ESA program. So that bar, that floor was already there. When you subtract the students that were already expected to be enrolled, then you can see how big of a difference the program itself is making in terms of increasing private school enrollment. And the answer to that question is about 8,000 or 9,000, just under 9,000. Now, the program itself, though, is still paying tuition for the wealthiest families in the state of Iowa, who can barely even feel the check that they write, and a lot of people who don't mind doing it at all. So when you look at the entire cost, the cost for school choice, meaning the number of students who are enrolled who would not otherwise be enrolled, is $37,000 per student.
Since you're running for governor, some critics might discredit this investigation. They might feel it's politically motivated. What's your response to that?
These are the Reynolds administration's numbers. It's just a simple math equation. How many students did they say we would expect to see enroll this year before the ESA program existed? What is the actual enrollment now that the ESA program exists? What's the difference between those two? And then if this is about providing school choice, how much are we spending to put that many students in private school? That's just math.
That wasn't the only reason, though, that was given for this. They're talking about the money should follow the student, not be used as the school when they're not actually providing the education for that student.
Sure. Yeah, if they want to continue with that argument, that's fine. But I think it's important for Iowa taxpayers to understand that at the end of the day, $37,000 per student is what taxpayers are paying for each additional student that would not have otherwise been enrolled in private school.
You mentioned private schools, the amount of them are increasing, but also the ones that are closing also increase. Do you have an idea as to why that's happening?
This is something that we could have looked into if they had been willing to open the books the prior year and let us review the program, or if they provided us the documentation in a more timely manner in the last year. but we can't really speak to that. There's certainly things that you can read out on social media about why those things are happening, but in terms of what our office can look at now.
You had mentioned some of the accreditation processes between the Department of Education and other entities. Why is that notable?
To me, and to many people, I think that the accreditation process is important. And the state used to have a floor for accreditation. Now they say, well, we're just gonna let many other entities that do accreditation, we'll have their accreditation qualified for people who want to do this work in Iowa, who want to run this private school in Iowa. 66% now, or excuse me, before the program, 66% were accredited through Iowa state accreditation. That number is now 2%. And I think that if the vast majority of the private schools are now using these other accreditation methods, to the point where now only 2% are accredited by the state, we should be asking questions about why so many have moved in that direction.
We do have a question soon.
Shoot.
Can you comment? Many of these schools listed as new already operated prior to the ESAs, but they are on the state's list because they are now seeking accreditation. That credit to qualify for ESAs. In 2024, I was told by the State Department that some schools were listed as new because they simply changed addresses and were assigned a new number by the state. Yes, state.
That churn, I think, is a natural piece of a new program. Certainly, we're going to get a clearer picture as time goes on. But again, these are just this is the publicly available data from the Reynolds administration that we used to put together this report. All righty. Thanks, everybody.